Welcome to Streets and Eats, the podcast where we want to inspire your next trip by telling you about some fantastic destinations and the best food to eat while you're there. On this episode of Streets and Eats, we want to take you to one of our favorite U.S. cities, San Francisco. While there, we'll tell you what we think are the most important things to do and eat.
So we'll start out giving you a little bit of general travel information for San Francisco because that's important for anything that you do. First of all, it's easy to get there by air. There's two airports that serve San Francisco, SFO and Oakland. And they're easy to get into the city from there. You just take the BART or, bus, hire a car or bus or something. It's very, very simple. It is a little bit harder to get to San Francisco by car. It's on the far west coast. California is a huge state. And it takes hours and hours and hours to get there from anywhere else. So we suggest you fly.
Right. You can also take the train. There's
there is a train
that runs along the coast. It goes through Oakland. So you'd have to get from Oakland, which is easy to do.
We have not train traveled in the States. That's on our bucket list. So maybe we'll do that soonish.
Yeah, it'd be a good blog or podcast. San Francisco is also very friendly weather-wise. I think it's got some of the best weather.
I think it has the best weather because I don't care for hot weather.
Yeah. It can get chilly. You definitely need to layer there. That fog rolls in overnight and settles over the Bay Area, keeps everything really cool in the morning. It burns off usually around noon in the summertime and warms up a little bit, but it never gets those scorching temperatures that you get inland more.
What I think is kind of interesting about San Francisco is you can go in February or you can go in August, and you're basically going to get the same weather. Yeah. It's going to be around the 60s during the day and, of course, cooler at night.
Well, it will get colder in mid-winter, January, December. Still, but then it's still comfortable.
It's still very comfortable, and you can do everything. If you are a person who likes to travel all over, like for our 50 states, 50 weekends challenge, then I would suggest going to San Francisco in the winter and crossing off one of your winter months with something that isn't going to change weather-wise.
Too much, yeah.
Yeah, because you can do everything, except maybe swim.
But like we say, always, layering is the key to travel and being comfortable in the weather. It's not much of a walking city because of the hills. I mean, there are a lot of very steep hills in San Francisco.
Well, the city itself is hard to walk between sites. Right. There are groups of sites, and we have that kind of worked out for you in our neighborhoods post on Roving Vales. But to say go to downtown and do everything, it doesn't work that way. It's a way too large a city for that. So you have to rely on public transportation. Thankfully,
there's really good public transportation there. The whole Bay Area is serviced by the BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, which is an underground, overground, as needed type thing. Couple lines run through San Francisco. It connects the Bay Area to both of those airports, Oakland and SFO. And it's probably the best way to get around city to city. Once you're in San Francisco, there's an excellent bus system, trams, streetcars. One of my favorite things is those old streetcars that run down along Fisherman's Wharf, where they've brought in old streetcars from cities around the world. That's really cool. Of course, also included in that, which is also an attraction, is the cable cars. We'll talk more about those later. But one of the things I really like about public transportation in San Francisco is how easy it is to use, especially if you go ahead and get the Clipper card while you're there. And you can buy that online, or you can get it at Walgreens in the city or at the BART stations. But it's just a single card that gets you onto all of the transportation in the city and the Bay Area.
And it's easy to just tap up and put more money on it at each station as well. There are machines. Okay, so the thing is, San Francisco is an easy destination to get to. It's easy to get to, it's easy to get around, and there's plenty to do. Whether you go for a weekend, which I would go for to begin with, or if you go for a much longer time, there's plenty to do. Our top 5 things to do in San Francisco is a little bit kind of misconstrued in that the top 5 things all have sub things sort of interspersed. So it's kind of like
Our
not
top 5
just
is
going
more like
there, but it's
20.
like, yeah, it's like spending a few hours there.
Well, but we've been going to San Francisco
every year
for years. That's where my family is from. And so I grew up in the Bay Area. And when BART was first built, I would ride the BART train just in and out of the city without even getting off the train because you could do that for super cheap. But we would, of course, go to the city and visit the different sites. But there's always those sites that we want to go back to year after year. And there are some great ones.
Well, and we're gonna talk about the top 5 foods later, but just talking about BART stations, we always get off at this one BART station. What's the name of it? Do you remember?
Is it Market, I think?
No, it starts with an M. We're gonna look it up for you right now. But the problem is, we used to take the BART from the airport, San Francisco, to the place where we would get off to meet up with Jim's parents. And at this BART station, there's an excellent breakfast restaurant called Peter's Cafe.
Right.
And we would go there. I mean, we would go there every single year. It was on our list of things to do. I wouldn't say it's San Francisco. It's not one of our top 5 places to eat in San Francisco because it's not an iconic San Francisco type food. However, it is something that was important to us. Peter's Cafe.
Yeah, in Millbrae.
Millbrae is the station, and it's right behind the Millbrae station.
For a long time. It was the last station on the line that went out to the airport.
So, I mean, you can find out lots of things about public transportation, right? Anyway, so let's get going with our top 5 things to do. Our very first one is Fisherman's Wharf. Everybody's heard of Fisherman's Wharf.
It's world famous.
It is world famous. And when you go down there, you'll see people from all over the world just doing all kinds of tourist activities. From taking a harbor cruise, getting on and off the ferries there. There's plenty of museums, of course, and lots of restaurants and bars and shopping areas. Lots of souvenirs. At Pier 39, of course, that's probably one of the most iconic of the iconic, is the sea lions lounging on the dock, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think everybody who goes to San Francisco does not leave without that picture because they don't really move around that much, but they still are fun to watch.
And you're not going to spend a lot of time there. But if they're very active, which oftentimes they are, it's a pretty fun way to waste 10 or 15 minutes, and maybe even 30 minutes.
It's a good place to start. Fisherman's Wharf, also right around that area. You also have the double-decker carousel. You have the Musée Mécanique, which is a really cool little museum, especially for kids because it has old ping pong tables and not just ping pong, but like
arcade games.
Even older arcade games that are just nostalgic and fun.
Yeah, it's free, but of course you have to pay.
It's not free to play.
You have to play them. You have to pay to play the machines.
But it's not expensive.
No,
and
they're like quarter machines.
Yeah, we would go and we always spend at least an hour there just fooling around because they're so different.
Some really interesting old arcade games.
Some of the other piers right around Fisherman's Wharf, Hyde Pier, like there's the tall ships and the Maritime National Historic Park, which has its own visitor center. It's all about the marine and the economy right there that San Francisco is so well known for.
Well, San Francisco, yeah, it was a seafaring city from way back.
From Asia.
So Fisherman's Wharf is the heart of that. So
yeah, as we know, that was the main stop for anybody coming from Asia.
Right.
So there's lots of history that goes along with that.
Good and bad.
Well, of course, always. There's other museums all around the wharf. There's the Cartoon Museum. There's things for the kids like Madame Tussauds and Ripley's. And my favorite museum, even though it's technically, I guess, for kids, it's for learning, it's science, is the Exploratorium. I think we've gone to the Exploratorium, I don't know, at least 5 times.
You always find something new and fascinating to do.
And it's just fun. Like,
it's all science-based, hands-on. everything from exploring light waves and illusions to, sound and natural sciences, plants.
It changes too.
It always changes, and it's just huge, and there's just so much to do there.
What cracks me up about it is, like, the last time we were there, I was tired. It was a little warm outside. So I went to find a shady place to sit outside where all these kids were, this is before the pandemic, sitting out there eating lunch from a field trip. And so I go sit on this bench, and I didn't even notice that it was one of the exhibits. And it was a hearing exhibit where you sit down here and you hear different. It was just funny because it didn't take long to figure out that I was part of the exhibit without meaning to be. And that's what the whole thing's about.
Hope you
anyway.
weren't snoring like you usually do.
Oh, stop.
But yeah, I can remember going to the Exploratorium as a kid.
Yeah.
And it's moved locations. It wasn't always on Fisherman's Wharf. But it is now down on Pier 19 across from the Embarcadero.
And another real big highlight is the aquarium down there. I love going to an aquarium. They're just so much fun. And again, you learn so much while you're there.
Yeah. Also, if you're going to be taking a ferry, you're going to be in Fisherman's Wharf if you're taking the ferry out of San Francisco, or one of the harbor cruises.
Which we just did a couple weeks ago. We took a harbor cruise out of San Francisco. That was a lot of fun.
That is good. They take you out. The one we took you along Fisherman's Wharf, of course, and then out under the Golden Gate Bridge, and then back along the Sausalito side, and then around Alcatraz. So you got a really good close-up view of Alcatraz without actually visiting it, and then back 2 hours.
I think it was only an hour.
Maybe it was a 1 hour.
I don't know what it was.
It's a good deal.
I think you could go on any of the harbor cruises and have a good time. And they have all kinds of harbor cruises and harbor boat tours, I should say, because they have the slow, quirky ones, and they have the bigger ones, and they have the fast ones, and they have the
sailboats and
sailboats, and they
whatever
also
you're
have
into.
a dinner cruise, and you name it, they've got a cruise for it. And quite frankly, I think take one.
Anytime you
They're
get
all
out
fun.
on the water, it's going to be a good thing.
Anyway, so that's Fisherman's Wharf, and I think it's definitely a great place to start when you're in San Francisco. Plenty to do, plenty to see, plenty to eat, which we'll talk about. Tons of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about transportation. Of course, Fisherman's Wharf, all the way along the waterline, you can take those historic streetcars. That's a great way to get around the wharf.
Well, not just that, but you can just sit in them and enjoy yourself, too.
Right,
we love to do that.
Yeah, just ride up and down. You don't have to be going anywhere.
We're little kids. We want, this is no lie. When we ride on things like that, we always sort of like to ride long enough where we can finagle our way up to the front and get the front seat.
Get the best views.
And then we just will sit there and ride it back and forth for a few times, because why not? You get to sort of see the world. It's always either warm or cold, depending on what you're trying to avoid outside. And it's a good rest for your legs, but it just gives you a different view. And I think we do that everywhere. Where were we just recently that we did the same thing? Oh, San Diego Zoo.
San Diego Zoo.
Yeah, which is a whole different podcast. But yeah, I mean, we wanted to make sure we're in the front seat so we get to see the animals. I mean, we're kids. We're kids at heart.
So there's those streetcars, but also Fisherman's Wharf is where you're going to get onto the second attraction, I guess, for San Francisco that we will tell you about, which is the cable cars. Even though it's a form of transportation, the cable cars themselves are iconically San Francisco. The cable car system there is the oldest in the world. I think it's the last cable car system servicing a city regularly. And they're just pretty damn cool.
They are. One thing I always think of when I think of cable cars, if you're old enough to remember this, is Rice-O-Roni, the San Francisco treat.
Right.
And they always had the cable car. That
Coming
was what
up
their
over
commercial
that,
was. Yeah.
Really spectacular view with Alcatraz out in the bay, and the cable car crests the hill. Well, these hills are super steep. And
yes, they are.
And that's where the cable cars came from. The hills were too steep for horses to really manage the horse-drawn carriages. So this great inventor, back in 1873, came up with the idea of pulling the cars with cables that run below the street. And I mean, it's still in existence. It's definitely a lot.
It's changed a little bit.
Yeah, they're a lot fewer than they originally started out with. That was all pre-electricity and gasoline engines and stuff like that. So once those were starting to develop, things changed. So you got a lot more of the bus lines taking over for cable cars. So there's only 3 cable car lines now. What are they? They're like the Powell Mason. So it runs from Powell Street to Mason Street, Powell to Hyde, and then California Street.
I think it's the Hyde Street one where you really get that awesome view.
Yeah.
It was so at the top of the mountain, and it's also maybe it's a hill, but I call it a mountain.
Might as well be a mountain if you've ever walked it or driven up it.
But it's got fantastic views. You can get great pictures of the cable car there as well. So I suggest you go into that one.
Yeah, it's well worth just riding each line up and down.
I think so
if
too.
If you have time, just for the views and just seeing the city. It's a great way to see the city. They can be crowded.
They can be. I think maybe if you go
again,
early in the morning, it's a good time to go.
And that's another good reason to stay on it for a little while.
Yeah, so you get the
find your way to a
part
good
that
view.
you want to get on. Although another thing that I think of when I think of cable cars is sort of hanging off the side of
Right.
it. I don't know where that comes from.
Because
some movie or something.
So
I don't know.
You hang off the side.
But we did that one time, and we have us doing that iconic, crazy picture where we're all hanging on by one hand, sort of leaning over on the cable car. I mean, have fun. Why not? You might get yelled at nowadays,
Get that
but still.
picture.
There's also a cable car museum.
Yeah, it's free too.
It's free, and it's located at the Mason Powerhouse and Car Barn, which is on Nob Hill. Again, with some really pretty views, and the museum itself being free, you can go in for as long or as little as you want, 2 or 3 times. We tend to go almost every time we're there just because
It's just so fast.
we want to ride a cable car. It's a neat little museum.
Of course, it tells you the history.
Yeah.
But it also is the powerhouse where the cables are coming up through the street, so you can see where they come up through the street and then run through the whole system that keeps everything spinning and moving. And that's really the only way you're going to see that is in that museum. You might want to check. Last I knew, it was closed for COVID.
Well,
it should be
the
open
cable
soon.
cars are supposed to be coming back online in fall of 2021. Just like anything else, as we've kept reminding you, if you're going to go or plan to go somewhere and these things sound great to you, make sure that they're open before you actually
Do your research.
plan the trip.
See what's going
This
on.
is in this time frame, in this era of travel that we're in, it's more important than ever to do your research beforehand. One thing that we like to tell you about, because we're educators, what can I say, is we have collected over the years many stories, especially kids' stories, but some adult stories too, where you can get a book and read about something. So one of, I would say, Jim's and our grandson's favorite stories is about cable cars. It's Mabel and the Cable Car, and it was written by Virginia Lee Burton. We'll put a link for it in the show notes. And if you're like us, you just want to make sure that if you're taking somebody there or explain to them what
kids.
it is, that you can read this story and then really give some good background.
Yeah, it's a great children's story that just kind of is a good introduction to San Francisco historically, and the cable cars, of course.
Okay, so that brings us to number 3. Now, to be honest, we didn't put these in the order of things that we like. We just did them in the order that we thought of, in all fairness. So the next thing is Golden Gate Bridge. Now, for years and years and years and years, every time I went to San Francisco, I would turn to Jim and I would say, "Let's walk the bridge." And not that he didn't want to do it, but because of family obligations or what have you, it just didn't happen. So finally, we got to walk across the Golden Gate Bridge.
And what'd you think?
I was cold. That's what I thought.
It's cold. It's windy up there.
Oh my golly, I couldn't believe how cold it was.
And even on a warm day, you definitely need to be ready. Again,
Layer. Yeah, we say that all the time.
Of course, you can buy at the visitors or the welcome center there before the bridge walk. You can buy a sweatshirt or a jacket.
With our group, our family group that went, we had to buy a big, heavy
Led by
sweatshirt
one.
for someone because they didn't come prepared. And you could tell it was going to be cold before we even got going, and it was frigid,
chilly,
and
but
it wasn't even. It was
from
in
the
summer.
bridge, yeah, it was June, I think, July.
So you can walk, rent, or even bike across the bridge. You can rent bikes and go across the bridge, or bring your own bike, of course.
A lot of tours for that.
It's there are tours that do it as
Biking
well.
tours.
Yeah, biking tours, and it's actually 1.7 miles each way. You cannot get off the bridge at the other side. You have to turn around and come back. So just know, like I was in my less than research type world, I was thinking that we would walk across, we'd catch a bus, and we'd come back. Oh, no. We walked both ways. I mean, it's an easy walk. The bridge is, it's flat. It was easy. It's just chilly.
It's just windy and chilly, but the views are spectacular. You've got the whole bay out in front of you with the city skyline. You're not going to beat those pictures of the city for sure. Weather permitting, of course. If it's a foggy day, it's just a different view because the fog settles over the city. Yeah. and it can be really spectacular. Or it can be socked in.
But, if you're there a couple of days, you don't have to go the socked in day.
Pick your timing. Afternoon, of course, is best.
I would say afternoon.
Give the fog a chance to roll out. But don't go too late that it's coming back in.
One of the cool things, and they have these in other bridges as well, is the zipper truck.
Oh, right.
Oh, I just love this. I had never seen it before. So here we are walking across the bridge, and the zipper truck comes along. And what that does is it changes the lanes, but it actually looks like a zipper. I mean, it's aptly named. I thought it was way cool. I'm a little bit nerdy that way, I guess. I thought it was fun to watch.
It's an ingenious solution, really, for the rush hour traffic. So you can have 3 lanes going in one direction and 2 in the other, and switch it to get the moving traffic, the changing traffic pattern.
Or they could have just made 6 lanes. I think that would have been cheaper.
Well, you're not going to rebuild the bridge. You're not going to expand the bridge.
Well, that's just
it's hard enough just to keep it painted.
As Jim mentioned, there is a welcome center that tells you about the history of the bridge, tells you about the history of the area, has a nice sweatshirty shop in there.
Coffee
stay
shop.
warm. A coffee shop.
Small cafe. It can get crowded, though. Be careful.
And it even has a picnic area if you want to, eat outside. But the Golden Gate Bridge, I mean, you got to go there. It's iconic. It is San Francisco.
We use that word a lot, but
you can't,
it is.
not go to the Golden Gate Bridge. You got to go.
People always want the best view of the bridge, and people always want to walk across the bridge, or at least onto the bridge.
So that brings us to Golden Gate Park, which, of course,
our fourth attraction, must-see place in San Francisco is definitely Golden Gate Park.
And it's huge.
Again, I've been going there since I was a kid with field trips from school, family outings, concerts, Shakespeare in the Park. It's all there. And it's just a massive, massive park in the middle of the city. They call it an urban oasis.
Yeah, there's tons of gardens there, 1.6 square miles just of gardens. Things like Tree Fern Dell, Fuchsia Dell, Shakespeare Garden, Rose Garden, Queen Wilhelmina Tulip Garden.
There's a rhododendron garden. There's so much going on there. I really remember the bisons as a kid, just seeing these massive beasts wandering around in the paddocks.
It seems really like such a weird thing to have in the middle of a city.
Yeah.
A bison paddock, but cool, right? And then, the rhododendron gardens at the Botanical Garden, which is another 55 acres chock full of trees, plants, and flowers.
Right. And you can, of course, I think we have a link on our website where you can download the map and get the app to help you get around Golden Gate Park. It's just so big. I mean, you could spend, I think, a weekend visit to the city and never get out of the park. There's so much to do there.
There really is.
So you really want to pick and choose. One of my favorite museums is there, the California Academy of Sciences. Dinosaur skeletons, all that natural history stuff. I just love.
Me too.
And the art museum, the De Young Museum. One of my favorite exhibits that I've ever been to in a museum was there, because I haven't been to China and I haven't seen the Terracotta Warriors.
You hadn't.
I still haven't. You and the girls went.
Oh, I was going to say, you've been to China.
I've been to China now,
but you haven't seen the Terracotta Warriors. I've seen the Terracotta Warriors.
But that was one of the exhibits they have there. And after your explanation of seeing the dig, oh, maybe it was a better way to see the Terracotta Warriors was at the De Young Museum.
I don't know about that.
Because they had all the really spectacular pieces there.
Xi'an's more than spectacular. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's a great art museum. Has lots of neat stuff there. Some of the other things that you might want to see on top of the botanical gardens, there's a conservatory of flowers, which is modeled after the Kew Gardens in London. It's
Beautiful
gorgeous.
building.
Is
Wood,
it?
glass, like that one of those really huge, massive, rounded roof, like what you would expect of a 19th century greenhouse.
Yeah.
Really
There's
beautiful.
Something that we always love, our Japanese tea gardens. There's just something, maybe from our time in Japan, after we're having lived there for so long, we just love to go through the manicured.
They're just so peaceful and zen-like.
Peaceful, yeah. And
get some Japanese tea.
talk to the koi in the ponds.
Right.
Maybe feed them if they're allowed. We don't always go to the tea house serving the tea, but you can do that as well. And then there's Stowe Lake, which is always fun because you get to rent a boat and you can paddle across or take an electric one if you're lazy.
Get a rowboat. I'd probably go with the electric.
Rowboats are hard.
I like a rowboat.
I don't mind pedaling, but I don't want to row.
No, see, I'd rather row than pedal.
Well, what they need is a pedal row. You row, I pedal.
Well, that would just turn into me rowing.
Well, that's true. I would like that.
But
Anyway.
get a picnic, go out to the park. You can just go out and sit and enjoy nature. If you want.
There's hikes.
Hiking.
You can, of course, hike, bike. People are running all the time. I don't know why.
People like to run.
There's cafes around the area. The museums are fabulous if you're interested in that.
For sure.
They're world class, exactly. I mean, there's just really so much to do in the park itself that it's well worth the trip. And number 5, which maybe is one of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah. Mainly because of the book I'm going to tell about.
Okay, so this is another one of our children's books.
It is. So as I was teaching my upper elementary kids, one of the books I always read to them, because I love the book so much, is Al Capone Does My Shirts. And I'll put the link, of course, in the notes. But it's just, it's a kid's book, but it's about, this gangsta. And the whole penitentiary, the whole trip out there, the fact that you have to take a boat to get there.
It's a prison, not a penitentiary.
Okay.
I'm just saying. The penitentiary makes it seem like easy going.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay.
They send minor criminals to penitentiaries, but Al Capone, no. He went to the most secure, maximum security prison in the world at the time. Alcatraz.
Well, and you just hear about it on all the movies,
right.
And to me, it's one of those places that I was going to use the word iconic. No, don't do that. It's one of those places that you almost can't go to San Francisco and not do. Take the boat out there. They have where you can take tours where they lead you through it and tell you little stories, which those are
good.
fun.
Yeah.
Or you can use the
audio
tours, which also tell you stories. I personally like to read the placards, and then I read what I want and move on. But I do also listen to the park rangers because you can ask them a question and they will usually tell you a story or tell you a little history about it. Yeah, I like talking to them more really than taking sort of a...
Debbie even got a kind of like a behind-the-scenes tour.
Yeah, she did.
On one trip where she was asking some questions about, I think, the infirmary. And the ranger that was there was like, well, hey, instead of just telling you about it, I'll go show you. And he had the keys. So he brought her, and whoever else happened to see the transaction just kind of went along with them and got a little extra tour out of the deal. How fantastic.
But I definitely think that's something you should do. Alcatraz is a lot of fun. And also, whether you have kids or not, read the book. Al Capone Does My Shirts. If you're an adult and you're reading it to yourself, it probably won't take you very long, a couple hours, because it's a kid's book. But it's very, very good.
It's easy to get to. You do want to get reservations.
You have to take a tour to it.
Because you have to take a tour. You have to take the boat out, of course.
Yeah.
And they can be hard to get in the summertime. So we'll put a link to one of our partners that offers tours that is pretty good. But as soon as you know when you're going to San Francisco, I would say that's probably the first thing that you need to book.
Nowadays, I mean, I think that's almost a moot point. You have to do that for everything.
You have to.
Even museums, because if they're fully opened, I don't know if it'll still be the case, but most of the places that we've been, like we just went to the Getty. The Getty was only at 50%.
But you still had to make...
And you had to make reservations. So it doesn't really matter.
Even though it's free.
Yeah. So it doesn't really matter where you're going. My advice is to go into the site and make sure that you've got reservations or you've bought your tickets ahead of time to ensure that you know when you're going.
Well, what my point was with the Alcatraz is that's going to be your hardest thing to get reservations for. So go in there when you've got that 2 or 3 day window and hopefully find a time for that one and then build the rest of your reservations around that time.
Well, one of the things I like to do when I'm in San Francisco, well, really anywhere, is eat.
To eat. And San Francisco has some good food.
Well, think of the population. As we said before, we were talking about Fisherman's Wharf. This was the gateway from Asia. So still today, if you're
to the Pacific,
well, and both ways actually, right? So of course there's a high population of people who are Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Filipino, everything, and the foods they bring along with them is just amazing. Having steamed buns or sushi or dim sum or
noodles.
Oh, there's just so much you can have. So I would say, even though they're not necessarily what I would call iconic San Francisco foods, just because they're ethnic foods, I think they're important to have. So make sure that that's sort of included in your repertoire when you're there, and especially go to Chinatown and Japantown and all those places and eat and
enjoy
and eat.
But really, what you have to have when you go to San Francisco, we want to keep throwing around that I word.
I'm not going to use that I word anymore. But what we want to do is have those foods that are
San Francisco,
that were developed and made famous in San
right.
Francisco, and what San Francisco is known for. And so our top 5,
and the top of that list,
the number one
has to be the Dungeness crab. So you can't walk around Fisherman's Wharf and not see Dungeness crab. I mean, they've got giant crabs up on the sides of buildings to let you know what they are selling there, or serving there.
You can get them at a stand. You can get them at a restaurant. Stands. You can get them to go. You can get them to eat there. You can get them for very, very expensive prices, and you can get them for rather cheap prices.
Yeah, and you'll see big pots of boiling water, and they're just going to throw that crab in there and cook it up for you, and you eat it right there at the stand if you want to. Or, go into one of the nicer restaurants, the Franciscan Crab House, which is right on, it's actually where you get the harbor cruises, or it's very near to the Alcatraz cruises too. But it's right on the water. So
make reservations because it's very popular, but it's a beautiful restaurant and well known for its crab.
For sure. But if you can't get in there, you're going to find
there's plenty of crab. I would say, and I'm sure I'm wrong, but almost every restaurant is going to serve some sort on Fisherman's Wharf.
There's going to be crab of some sort there. One of my favorites was the crab cakes at the Blue Mermaid,
and they also even put it in the corn chowder.
And crab and the corn chowder, both were excellent.
Yeah, it was all very, very good, and it was a nice, comfortable place to sit. Again, when you're pounding the pavement, it's always nice to have some ideas where to go to sit down and take a break.
Maybe find a clean bathroom. Which they have there too.
Yeah. We have some things that are important to us.
There's priorities in your travel. Clean bathrooms are definitely one of them.
Okay, and so the other thing, speaking of that area, is Boudin's. Okay, I would say Boudin. How do you say it? Boudin? Boudin's? I can't say it right. I don't know why. Bakery. And what they're famous for is San Francisco sourdough bread. And I have to tell you, I don't think I ever had sourdough bread before I went to San Francisco. I've had it many places since then.
Right.
But I don't remember ever having it before going to San Francisco.
And that's definitely one of the things San Francisco is famous for.
And that is the place to have it. And what's really cool and I'm a sucker for this kind of thing, right? I love to see how things are made, and I love to watch people, and I just love to see them making things, the process. And so, right across from where you pick up the Harbor Cruise, right across the street from the Franciscan Crab House, is the Boudin Bakery, like, main building.
It's huge.
It's very large, and there's a restaurant upstairs, and there's a cafe downstairs.
There's a to-go place.
There's a to-go area.
They were even cooking outside at the time we were there.
We were cooking out. I mean, there's a store that you can buy different things.
At the store, it was attached to the bakery. So, of course, you could buy breads and baguettes and, of course, the sourdough bread. But then you could go in, and they had California cheeses, California wines, California olives, all these really like nice, good, maybe not San Francisco produced, but California produced. And you could put together your own little picnic. And go out and watch the ships or watch the fishermen
rent a boat and take it on
go
the
out
boat.
to Golden Gate Park and have a picnic. So you could do that there. But I think what you are more interested in...
What I was going to say is on the street side, not the water side of the building, there's a big, huge plate glass window, which the reason it's there is because the line goes that way. And this gives you something to do while you're waiting in line, which the lines can get pretty long. So I would go early. But they're making... little bread. Well, we were there. They were making little bread people. Maybe they make other things.
They have different shapes and figures that they make.
Yeah, and it was just really fun. But you would see them actually get the dough, prepare the dough, have the dough come out of the oven. It was just fun. I love that kind of thing.
Different figures.
Yeah.
It's
like
cool.
dough art.
Yeah.
Which who doesn't love that?
And then you can go into the store and buy it.
Yeah, and eat it.
And
it was all very good. It was all very good.
And that's also right there, Fisherman's Wharf, right. Very central, close to where the ferries leave from and the harbor tours leave from.
Well, and here's the thing.
And it's close to Pier 39, too.
You don't have to have sourdough bread at that building.
You're going to find it everywhere.
Yeah. But I would go by and at least watch the process and maybe go to the store and see what they have on offer. But any type of sourdough bread in any restaurant, you're going to really enjoy it.
They had a chocolate sourdough bread that you could buy at the bakery, which I did not try. I'm not hugely
I like sourdough bread.
Sourdough.
My favorite sourdough bread recipe, and I learned this in Alaska, where they do the deadliest catch. So right there, they pick crab. That's the whole idea, right? And so their famous sandwich is a sourdough bread with crab, just boiled and put on there, with cheddar cheese. That is it. There is nothing else on that sandwich.
I don't think Gordon Ramsay would
toasted.
be happy about cheese on seafood.
I don't care. That is the most delicious sandwich ever.
It is good on a sandwich, for sure.
But it wasn't made into a salad.
Oh, so that was king crab, probably.
It was king crab, but you could do the same thing.
So they just took out huge leg chunks and slapped. Oh, that's nice.
It was delicious. Anyway, so the next thing everybody's heard about again is Ghirardelli chocolate.
It used to be the Ghirardelli chocolate factory was right down there in Fisherman's Wharf. A huge, really impressive and beautiful brick building that covered about a city block right at the end of Fisherman's Wharf. And that was there for a long time. I think it was in through the 70s before they moved the factory out. But they kept the building, and it's still the Ghirardelli Chocolate Center. They have a whole floor of the building is open for a chocolate cafe and shops, of course. So you can get all your Ghirardelli chocolate while you're there. I really like their hot chocolate, and their chocolate chip cookies are to die for.
So, like we said, the temperature is pretty much cool all year long.
Yeah, so you can enjoy that hot chocolate.
You can enjoy
all year long.
The hot chocolate and that hot chocolate chip cookie anytime that you are there. It is such a great snack. It's delicious.
Yeah, and of course they have seasonal offerings that you can buy to take home to your friends and family. Christmas candy Christmas chocolates, I should say, in wintertime, and Easter chocolates in springtime.
Everything.
All that
I mean,
good
it's
stuff.
a chocolate store.
It's fun to just go there, get a hot cocoa, get a chocolate chip cookie, sit at one of the little tables, and just watch the people coming in, going crazy for chocolate. I wish it was still the factory, because a factory tour is always great. But this is the next best thing.
I agree. So that was number 3. Number 4 and 5, we veer a little bit off course because we're going to talk about meals that you should get. And the first one is Cioppino.
Yeah, well, Cioppino is a seafood stew that originated in San Francisco. It since has spread around. There's a really good one here in Tacoma at the Metropolitan, in fact. It's one of their good soups that you can get for lunch.
Well, we're not talking about Tacoma.
But in San Francisco, if you're going to find Cioppino, of course, you can find it at all the restaurants in Fisherman's Wharf. But there's one specifically that's been operating for 5 generations.
Called what?
Called Cioppinos. Because that's what they do best. And it is delicious. And it's a really hearty tomato broth with
Of course,
every
crab.
type of California seafood you can imagine, including the Dungeness crab. I really like to find abalone in it, clam, salmon, all of that good deliciousness is there. So that's definitely something you need to have with a nice piece of warm
Sourdough bread.
buttered sourdough bread.
See how that works out?
That I do like. That's when I like sourdough bread.
Well, yeah, you got to dip it in
Dipping and it's delicious.
A little bit higher priced restaurant that you can also get Cioppino in is called Sotomare, and that's also just a beautiful, nice old San Francisco classic restaurant that
Right.
everybody
Great seafood.
everybody goes to. Yeah. And then finally, the very last time we were there, which just a few weeks ago, we went to the House of Prime Rib. If you look at any research about eating in San Francisco, every single article will tell you to go to the House of Prime Rib. So we did.
If you're vegan or vegetarian, you might not want to go there, but if you enjoy beef,
Well, they have fish.
they do have some other things.
They do have some other options, but
But
really, yeah.
House of Prime Rib. I mean, it's all in the name.
It's don't go if you're vegan or vegetarian. Anyway, it's been open since 1949, and you can tell. As soon as you walk in the door, you feel like you're back in one of those old-timey, sort of fancy red booth.
Red leather booths, very, very upscale feeling.
Tiffany lamps,
Right.
elaborately carved accents in the wood. It just feels sort of
They have these
elegant.
these mobile serving stations where they put the whole prime rib on the station, and the chef or a chef comes out and he's in charge of one station per chef, and they push it up to the table and they slice your beef right off that whole rib roast for you, but the station itself is just this beautiful stainless steel, elaborate, almost an Art Deco style decoration.
That belongs in a museum.
Right.
It just is so. It seems so outdated at this point, but it's great.
But it's timeless.
and it is timeless.
Somehow it's remained timeless.
And so they do that for your salads. They do them by the table side, and they do the prime rib right there for you, and then they just bring the sides along with it. Everything was good from appetizer to finish. It was delicious.
Some of the best beef I've ever had. Dry aged, 29 days. And they have it in the windows. You can see where they're dry aging it, which is also a beautiful sight.
Anyway,
But definitely a must.
yeah, you got to go there. I mean, it took us years and years to get there, but that's okay. Some things are worth the wait. Anyway, that's San Francisco in a crab shell. We we really go there. It's one of our cities that we love in the United States, and we go to again primarily because the family is nearby, but also because it's just a great city. And it's easy to do whether you're there for a weekend or if you're there much longer. And we have itineraries and all kinds of things for you on our
Lots of
website.
articles.
So check out our San Francisco portion of Roving Vales, and you'll get to see that. We think it's one of the most fun and interesting cities in the U.S., and
We think you will too.
we think you will too.
Well, thanks for joining us again at Streets and Eats, where we always want to encourage you to savor the adventure. Please remember to hit the subscribe button and tell all your friends.
Ciao for now.